developer Took Games have released Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance to Xbox Game Pass for both console and PC. On the surface, this game ticked every box in what I was looking for. It's an action RPG set in the Dungeons & Dragons universe with up to 4-player co-op action, a loot system, upgrade paths, and a lot of different skills to choose from. In practice, though, I am thoroughly disappointed by baffling design decisions and rampant bugs. It isn't all bad news, but not since Necromunda Hired Gun have I been more disappointed by a game. Here is our review of D&D Dark Alliance. At first glance, you may think this is a horde beat-em-up, but it actually plays much more like a Souls game. Combat is deliberate, and animations, kinda, cannot be cancelled out of. Your attacks are tied to your right bumper for light attacks and right trigger for heavy. The left bumper is parry when you press it and block when you hold it. The parry appears to have no cooldown on it, and you can essentially spam it while your attack animations play out. Every single press of an attack button will chain to another animation, so if you press the right trigger 3 times, your character will attack 3 times no matter how long it takes. And as someone who came in expecting something a bit more spammy, I was able to adjust quickly, but a terrible lock-on system hindered the combat for me at every turn. An easily solvable issue is that the default camera for horizontal looking is way too slow on console, so you should quickly up that to at least 75 on the meter before you do anything else in the game. And far too often, even with changing that, I still found myself facing the wrong direction despite trying my damnedest to hit a mob directly next to me. Left trigger sets you up for a ranged attack, which is useless garbage for 3 out of the 4 characters. B button is your dodge, A is for jumping, and Y triggers your 2 skills through either a press or a hold. The skills have incredibly long cooldowns to start with, and as each character levels independently, you are in for the long haul if you want to get deep into leveling things with each class to see how they play out. There are 4 classes available, and not one of them is a magic user, which is baffling that in the mix, especially with one of the classes being focused on ranged bow attacks, that none of them are a mage or a wizard or any type of spellcaster. The 4 who are here, though, are Drist Doorden, the infamous dark elf of D&D lore. He plays like a rogue and is massively overpowered. Then you have Bruno Battlehammer, who is a dwarven sword and board fighter and is fantastic in a co-op group. His adopted daughter, Catty Bree, is mainly an archer who has some weak-ass kicks and is alright. Rounding thing out is the big barbarian man, Wolfgar, who likes to swing his hammer a lot and spin while yelling even more. Going back to Catty Bree, she has a heal to start with by default, which makes her unbelievably useful early on. And after playing for a while in 4-man groups through quick play, matchmaking, each character felt like they had their place, though having some sort of magic user would have made me a lot happier personally. Each character also has an ultimate ability on a very long cooldown as well. Catty Bree's arrows become enormous and superpowered. Bruno puts up a huge buff and debuff zone around himself. Wolfgar can spin around while his hammer's on fire. And Drist calls in an ethereal companion who attacks enemies for a rather short period of time. The main issue, though, is that no matter what you are doing, who you're playing, any of it, it doesn't matter because the brain-dead AI leads you being able to exploit them as much as you want if there are any knee-high ledges around that they can't climb up. They just stand there most of the time, and you can routinely win most fights just by hitting the attack buttons while spamming the parry button. There are some enemies, though, that have unblockable attacks that you must dodge, but your animations queuing up for attacks routinely lead you to one attack, then having to dodge. And if you accidentally do a second attack, you're in for taking a massive amount of damage because you are stuck in that animation. It's just not very fun solo, and it's occasionally mindlessly fun in co-op. One big issue I had with Necromunda Hired Gun was the fact that it was a loot-based gear system, but you could only equip gear in between missions. D&D Dark Alliance follows this Anthem launch path, and you can only see what loot you got, equip it, change out skills, and unlock feats in between missions in the small hub area. I will never understand how these types of loot systems that encourage you to create builds and try out different skills, but then they do not let you actually change things up mid-mission. As far as the loot goes, there is a helm, upper body, lower body, gloves, boots, one ring, and one trinket slot. It's the typical color-coded rarity system, and it's tied into a leveling and upgrading system that's all rather standard fare for the genre. One potentially neat mechanic during missions is you get the choice at certain points where you can either take a checkpoint that will save your place, refill all your consumables, and respawn all the enemies around you while lowering the loot rarity by 1, or you can choose to get none of those benefits or negatives, and instead you simply gain the loot rarity buff to drops. Unfortunately for me, the checkpoint part of the choice to rest broke a few times, and I died 30 minutes into a level while playing solo and got sent all the way back to the start despite having made 2 checkpoints. Graphically, things run at 60 FPS and a high resolution. There were multiple times, especially in the early levels, where the frame rate dropped to 5 or 10 per second for a few seconds at seemingly random times on me. Textures overall are a bit muddy, and I'd say it looks fine. The player models are decent, and the enemies have a good variety and a pretty horrific nature to them. One real positive area is the music, and also the voice acting's pretty well done. The music, though, it's the big, bombastic fare you'd expect from something like D&D, and I was pleasantly surprised that the voice acting held up pretty well overall. Your enemies will repeat lines quite often, and in the tutorial area, I'm pretty sure I heard the same line about 60 times in a few minutes during each different part. Wrapping things up, as this is on Game Pass, the only thing you're spending extra is your time. So if you have a few friends to play with, there are worse ways to go about it. But if you're looking at this game solo, then I'd say it's a hard pass, free or not. As it is available on both PC and console on Game Pass, if you're watching this review well after launch, I'd take a look and see if they've patched the game up well, because it has the potential to be solid. It's just nowhere near that at launch. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please tick that little bell and you'll know whenever we post. And we will see you here next time on XboxEra.